Catherine Cantey, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be with you today. You're joining us from South Carolina. I'm here in Orem, Utah, and we're going to be talking today about stakeholder-centered coaching method. This is a really interesting topic to me. I think looking at business vitality and how to get past the digital divide in the modern workplace, particularly during this COVID period, I think is really important. And we're going to explore that from this stakeholder-centered coaching method kind of a perspective. As we get started, I wanted to share Catherine's bio with everybody. Catherine Cantey is a tenacious connector and recovering banker. She is a leadership coach helping high potential managers turn into senior leaders. And her sales program for business to business selling is creating exceeding results. Catherine is a wife and mom and cares about closing and broadband gaps in rural communities. Such a wonderful background. I'm again super excited to be with you. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
I think you did a great job, and I'm looking forward just to sharing stories and best practices. And if that helps somebody else, then this is well worth the call and sharing information.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. And let's start with some definitions. Again, I was trying to frame in that introduction, currently, of course, we're in the middle of this pandemic. So many organizations have gone virtual or hybrid with dispersed workforce, distributed, in some cases across the world. More and more organizations, are becoming more comfortable with those types of technologies. But it's been a hard year and a half. It's been a steep learning curve for a lot of people, for a lot of organizations to be able to go through that digital transformation and to have that kind of a transition. And during all of this, people like you and me are doing work with organizational leaders to coach and to help them adapt. And so while there are a lot of different coaching methodologies out there, there's a lot of different approaches. One is the stakeholder-centered coaching method, which is the one that you employ. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What makes this method unique? Why do you find it to be valuable? And then we can look more at how that specific method may help within this current context.
Yes, John, I'm happy to share about stakeholder-centered coaching. You shared a lot of different topics, not just about the stakeholder-centered coaching piece, but also the digital divide that's taking place across the country and the world. And I think one thing with COVID and this pandemic and everything that's taking place, there's a lot of change that's taking place. And with a lot of change comes opportunity if we have the right mindset to be able to receive the opportunity that's coming our way. There's been a lot of change just in the past 10, 20 years, even the past 100 years. We didn't have electricity in all the homes that were around the country. And so normal back then would be a kerosene lantern. And to put fire and electricity into a home was just unheard of. And so opportunities pop up, and it's our decision of whether we want to embrace them and continue to lean in and be curious about where this is going to take us. And I think spending more than 2 decades in corporate America, there are just a lot of people that are searching for more out of life. And I think the millennials that are coming in to the workplace are also expressing that there's more to life than what my parents showed me, which was working, 24/7 and never really having a break. And as I work with leaders, I'm beginning to incorporate, how are you balancing this work-life integration, and how are you taking time away for yourself to be able to refresh and recharge, because that's just as important as the contribution that you're making at the office. So as devastating and as terrible as the pandemic is, I think it's also a way for us to embrace this change that I think has been spurring in that corporate environment for quite some time, just that need to be able to work in a different way and finally have permission to do that. So just kind of sharing that is just kind of like the forefront of it. And then as far as the digital divide, there is just a a big need in these rural communities. I know for sure, at least across America and probably beyond that, if we expanded beyond just that topic. But what we're seeing is there's reliable broadband gaps. And as people are beginning to want more space, maybe a bigger house and some land, and be able to just kind of step out of the city in some of these metro areas, as they come into the markets where I live, which is a rural community, you've got a lot of wonderful talent here, but we don't always have reliable broadband at people's houses. And so we have a lot of people that are moving in from, the Charlotte area, the Atlanta area, New York, California, and they're like, what do you mean you can't have consistent internet? And I've got a friend that lives in California, and they live here for the summertime, just to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle. And they're here, and they had to cut their trip short because they can't get reliable broadband at their house here. And so it's pulling them back to the city because work has to continue and people have to keep working and contributing. And identifying where the gaps are is the first step. And then creating partnerships and collaborations with the providers, and then also bridging some partnerships with private and public funding to be able to help bridge that gap. It's pretty much going to be like rolling out electricity. We're going to be rolling out broadband. And we've seen a lot of really exciting changes that have been taking place. But once again, I think this pandemic is pushing on us to push a little bit further and lean into the curiosity of what does it take to take this to the next step. And you're seeing a lot of telecommunication providers step up to the plate and want to be able to help close this gap. So I know that was a long-winded answer just in regards to reliable broadband and the pandemic, but I just kind of wanted to share those thoughts first. I don't know if you have anything before I jump into stakeholder center coaching.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And it resonates with me. Most of my family lives out in rural Missouri. And it's only been within the last couple of years that they've had any sort of decent, reliable, high-speed internet. And when I say high speed, it's not like where I'm at, it's not like gigabyte internet, but it's certainly better than, really what they had for so long, until I think they were still on dial-up until like 10 years ago. So, it's a really,
get it.
Yeah, it's a really tough thing. And so, that does hinder the ability for people, digital nomads, people who want to work anywhere. And more organizations have gone to distributed workforce and allowing people to work remotely. And so if that's the case, why not go, if you want to live out in rural countryside somewhere and just enjoy nature and enjoy the beauties of that area, and you can do your work from there just as easily as anywhere else, and the cost of living is way cheaper and way lower, why not do that? But if you don't have reliable internet, that's a big issue. So I appreciate your comments on that and the work that you're doing to try to bridge that digital divide and help allow people to do that. That's something definitely that I've seen out where my parents live. There are lots of people that are moving out there because of the cost of living issues and just the quality of life, work-life balance issues. The one main hindrance is probably just access to reliable high-speed internet. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
go ahead.
You want me to jump into stakeholder center coaching?
Let's jump in.
I didn't answer your first one.
Yeah, let's jump into stakeholder centered coaching method. What is that? Like, what are the particular elements of that really make that stand out and something that you want to focus your work on?
Yeah, so stakeholder center coaching is a method that has been around for over 40 years with at least a 95% or higher success rate with leaders. And it is measured results. And as a former banker, numbers and results are very, very important, because a lot of times you see a one and done type training class and everybody expects miracles. And we know that true change doesn't happen with a 45-minute seminar and a high five out the door. So stakeholder center coaching actually requires the leader to be able to have courage and discipline and humility to be able to engage stakeholders. And a stakeholder is going to be their manager, their peers, their direct reports. There's usually about a half a dozen of these folks. And the leader that we work with actually go to these stakeholders that are in their work environment, and we ask for them to be advocates and to be able to share feed forward information. And feed forward is different than feed back. Feed forward is we're asking for things in the future that we can do to improve upon. And it starts with a very basic framework, and it starts with ask, listen, thank. And if you look at your computer to the left and to the right of the space bar, there's the Alt key. And I like to joke, we're sitting in these long drawn out meetings and we're kind of feeling stuck. And I've used this in my own career where I see the Alt key and it just triggers a memory. It's ask, listen, thank. And so when I feel stuck or I feel like there could be more, I'll ask a question to one of the stakeholders or even to anybody in the room. And I listen to what the answer is. I don't argue with them. I don't tell them that it didn't work in the past, but I just listen to what they have to say. And then I just say thank you at the very end. So it's an ask, a very open-ended, future-focused question. What can we do better next time? And then listen, don't argue, and simply say thank you. And that's an entire conversation. You don't have to have a two-way dialogue, but that's pretty much the premise of stakeholder center coaching, is engaging these stakeholders just like you would with closing broadband gaps or any other opportunity. The pandemic, even though we may not be together all the time, but we're still collaborating with people, but in different ways. And so ask the question, listen to what others have to say, and simply say thank you. From that point, you are able to decide what you want to do. You may not want to do any of it, and that's totally fine. But if you are curious enough to ask the question, consider what was said. If there's a theme, 2 or 3 or 4 people are saying the same thing, there's a great opportunity there that you can actually maybe change 1 or 2 things. And really, if you want to create the change, you want to create the recognition from others, is you go back and you follow up with your stakeholders and you share what you heard, what you tried, and what you're willing to do going forward. And the consistency and the messaging with that and the clarity that comes with that is going to create recognition. And I'm working with a group of leaders now, and the recognition part is the hardest part. And, these are humble, hardworking, executive level leaders. And they're like, but I don't want to advertise that I'm doing this. People should just notice. But that's part of the process, is you have to get others to retrain the way they see you. And that is what's going to put you in the next position that's going to allow you to be able to give more to whatever it is that you're working on.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, so much there that I think we can zoom in on. And it starts really with intention, to be present with the people that you're coaching and to really truly listen, right? And I think that's something that differentiates coaching generally from, more of a mentoring type of a relationship that you might have with somebody. And mentoring is also important, but coaching is about helping others, helping the people you're coaching to uncover and discover themselves, the answers to their questions, their challenges, and help them figure out how to structure their path moving forward, right? And so that starts with listening. That starts with really just paying close attention to what their issues are, what the context is, what they're dealing with, and then crafting questions that push introspection, self-reflection, and encourage them to, like you were saying, to think into the future, to think about to envision the type of future that they want to see, and then think about the steps that are going to be necessary to arrive at that and to achieve that vision. And so I love the focus. I love really honing in on the stakeholders that you meet with. And maybe you can describe a little bit of how a typical session goes when you're meeting with somebody, whether it's an individual or sometimes if you're meeting with a group of people. How do you set the stage when you're meeting with them to start the process of asking those questions and listening and feeding forward, like you were just describing?
Yeah. So the very first meeting, first there's always multiple meetings, conversations and building a relationship just to see if it's a good fit, and it's okay if it's not. This is definitely not for everybody. And this is going to be for the team that is already creating exceeding results and you want to take them to the next level. So think about professional sports or any kind of, top level, professionals that are out there. They're going to engage on that coach or that next person that's going to help them even fine tune their game even more. And The first conversation actually starts with the founder or with the CEO of the organization, and those are typically defined as the sponsor for the work that we're going to be doing. And it's real important to have a sponsor set at the very top level to be able to set the tone and to set the expectations of this is what we're trying to do as an organization, and this is where we're going to continue to grow going forward. And they engage who the leaders are going to be. And this actually works for either individuals one-on-one, or this can work for a team. And I've had the luxury of being able to work with both. And I think one of the more interesting conversations I've had is I worked with an individual one-on-one, and then we expanded the program to include her team. And she says, it was fun to work, one-on-one, but now the rest of the folks are coming in and they're really taking these conversations that we've had one-on-one and we're expanding it out into the team. And it's like everything's clicking, but it's clicking at a new level. And we're shifting thought processes from focusing on what the problem is to focusing on all the solutions that can take place. And it's really shifting the way people are thinking and shifting the way they're responding to things, and beginning to look at things into the future and knowing that if we're going to take this organization to, the next level, we've got to stop doing a lot of stuff that we're doing, and we've got to start visualizing what our future is going to look like. And yeah, all these individuals have really stepped up to the plate and grown themselves, but they're going to have to really let go of a lot of stuff that got them to where they are and revision where they want to go next and fully embrace it. And another thing that I've noticed with a lot of these leaders is the answer is already inside them. They're either too busy, they don't want to take the time to sit down. They don't have the priorities to force themselves to sit down to reflect on what the answer is. And they're totally missing opportunities because they're not taking a step back to really listen to our intuition and what our gut is trying to tell us, which we have survived off of our intuition and gut for, hundreds of thousands of years. And so now, with so many different things coming at us, it's hard, and people are, responding to, cell phones and laptops and everything else, that we're missing what our intuition's telling us. And so when we force in some reflection time in there, even just 5 minutes a day, they are able to listen to what they know they need to do next. They can confirm with it. They can experiment with it. They can test it 1 or 2 times, see if it works, celebrate some small successes, and then build on that. And, at the original part of this question, you asked, what does it look like? It starts with the sponsor. It starts with the person at the top who is ready for the team to take it to the next level. And that's the very first conversation that we have.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that so many leaders just get so caught up in the day-to-day grind of everything that they're trying to accomplish. And being a leader is tough. It's a heavy weight. It's a weight that you don't get to ever let go of while you're in that role. Even when you go home at night, or you go off on the weekends, or even when you're off on vacation, it can be really hard to let go of that weight, that responsibility, and just recognizing that you have a team of people relying on you to help them be successful and to help the organization be successful. And that's a lot. And so I think leaders, even with the best of intentions, often will fall into the trap of not allowing themselves the quiet time, the self-reflective time, to just be present in the moment, to really consider their vision, how that plays into their strategic focus, and how they're prioritizing their time. Even just the little things they do, like how much time they spend on email versus meeting with their people in person, or whatever. And like you said, it doesn't take a lot. Now, a leader who's not used to doing this, one of the reasons why they need coaching is because they need someone to help them learn to prioritize quieting their mind, self-reflection, those sorts of things. And so coaching sessions can be part of that, to model for them how that can happen and what it could look like. And then, it's just a matter of like making sure, even if it's a really small amount of time, 5-10 minutes a day, I would advocate for more than that, but for someone who's really busy, who hasn't been doing it, like that's a really great start. And it's going to reap a lot of benefits. And so allowing people to just reconnect heart, body, mind, to their, how they approach the challenges that they face, how they interact with their people, hopefully the authentic connections that they're having with their people. All of that, I think, is just so essential. And while it may seem obvious, it's not obvious. Like it's a hard thing for people to do, and the vast majority of humans out there aren't doing this consistently, because they're too wrapped up in just the daily grind and all the technology that's there that distracts them and grabs their attention, is vying for their attention. All of that can hinder our ability to just quiet our mind, be present, and go through those self-reflective kinds of experiences.
Yeah, they joke that, oh, we're chasing a squirrel, 1 minute, or, oh, a squirrel, you're just kind of like, oh, there we go again, off that other topic. And I've got somebody else that describes it as just trying to keep all the marbles on the table, and you're trying to manage everything. And at some point you got to let something go, because you're not going to be able to do this by yourself any longer if you want to continue to grow. And I try to explain, it's going to feel uncomfortable to take that quiet time at first. And I just start with 5 minutes, because my gosh, if we can't find 5 minutes, we got bigger issues. And they're like, it's just so hard for 5 minutes. And so we'll talk about, there's free apps like Calm that you can download, and it's just a meditative app that talks to you while you're sitting there, just to get through the first 5 minutes of sitting in quiet. And then they begin to realize, after doing this for a month, and sometimes I'll just get creative and just tailor different solutions based off the group. And we did a calendar, and I just said, hey guys, I just need you to check mark which days are you able to do the 5 minutes at a minimum. And they came back, and the folks, it wasn't perfect, and I wasn't going for perfect. I was just going for the intention of trying to dedicate time and just realizing, what you're doing and being present with what you're doing. And the folks that were successful with it, it felt awkward, but I reminded them, if it's awkward, that means you're growing and you're heading in the right direction. And I said, so what happened during those 5 minutes? And they said, I figured out that I forgot to do 2 or 3 things. And before, I would never let that slip. But this 5 minutes just allowed me to recapture some items that could have slipped through the cracks, which wouldn't have been a big deal. But if it's a couple items every week, it begins to create a bigger impact. And having that time for reflection, whether it's sitting in a Calm app for a guided meditation, or whether it's just sitting in your car and turning your phone on silent for 5 minutes and just making a mental list, or just being present, just see what it can capture for you, and start small, and just celebrate the fact that you took 5 minutes and you're already ahead of the competition, because there's so many people and leaders that are out there who are responding to the squirrel and the squeaky wheel and keeping the marbles on the table, that if you could just take 5 minutes and create the clarity that you need, you're going to go ahead and accelerate beyond the other folks that you may be competing against in the business world.
Yeah, and I get it. It may seem counterintuitive to people, but in this case, doing less is more, right?
Yeah.
Quieting your mind allows you to reconnect with your intuition. It allows you to just reconnect the body, mind, and heart, in all those different elements of what makes us who we are and allows us to make good decisions. And that clarity can then allow us to just be far more effective and efficient. It can allow us also to be more creative and innovative. And so it really should be a no-brainer. But I get it. I get why people fall into the trap. I get why people get sucked into just the grind and the busyness and the twirling and the chasing the squirrels and whatever. And ultimately, we just got to commit. We got to commit to taking that time. And that's why coaching can be so valuable. I really appreciate the focus that you take on stakeholder-centered coaching and how you shared what you've shared about that with us today and the insights that you shared. I know at the time we're getting close to the end of our time, and I want to let you get on with your busy day. But before we close today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, and then give us the final topic on give us the final word on the topic for today.
Thank you. Thanks, John, for having me. My website is catherinecantey.com. You can also find me at LinkedIn with Catherine Cantey. If you visit my website, there is a resource page, and you can find that at catherinecantey.com/resources. And this is where we're keeping topics of just kind of short white papers, and also some other podcasts that we've been able to share some of these stories with. So if you're interested in any of that, that's going to be out there as well. And then I've also shared some videos around why it's important to think differently. And also over the years, I've been able to work with a lot of founders and CEOs, and they have shared a lot of best practices that have worked for them to continue to be successful over all these years. So I've been able to put some of these best practices together and have created a framework called Business Vitality. So you'll learn more about that at my site as well. And stakeholder center coaching is definitely a huge part of it, because as you set the vision and the strategy, you need to implement and create stronger collaboration and break down some of those silos that have been around. And stakeholder center coaching is a wonderful way to be able to execute and grow leadership within an organization. So thanks again for having me.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. I encourage listeners to reach out to get connected with Catherine, find out more about what she can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.